Hello. Hello.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well, and you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Where are you joining us from tonight?
Well, I would say sunny Santiago, Chile, but the sun went down some time ago, so
Right.
it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's bad, isn't it? Let's see, what do I need to kill? Is that better? Maybe.
Hello, Don.
Hi there.
Hey. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm about half asleep.
Yeah, I'm out. You in South America?
I am.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. And when you're growing up, you always think South America is south of North America. Well, no, it's not.
Yeah. What country you in?
I'm in Santiago.
Santiago, Chile. Oh,
Have you been here?
That's one place I've not been. That's Chile is on the Pacific side, going down below Peru.
As they say, God came up with a bunch of leftover parts when he made South America. So he took them in his hands and rolled them like this into a long string and sort of stuck them on the edge. So
Yeah, okay.
there's some of the world's driest deserts, some of the highest mountains, and some of the most beautiful lakes and glaciers. And they got just about everything.
Yeah. There's hopefully more will be joining. Alex is Alex, you on the line?
Yeah, I'm here, mate. How are
Hey,
you
Alex.
tonight?
Alex, Don is calling in from Calgary, and Alex right now is he's superintendent of a mine shaft project up. Where at, Alex? North?
In Saskatchewan, the Jansen project.
Oh, the Jansen, yeah, the Jansen potash or Rio Tinto. And
Which Dr. Schisler has been kind enough to give me some questions on and assignments, which has been helpful.
yeah, I got those, Alex, and I added them to the list. What I'll do is if Don can get through the questions that are on the list, then we'll hit yours. Otherwise, I'll take a stab at answering them.
So, Donnie, you're down there reviewing a project right now?
Yeah, we wound up for good or bad. Years ago, I walked in and volunteered to be on the SME Resource and Reserve Committee. And when Dr. Harry Parker decided to retire, he sort of tossed it into my lap.
Right.
And I've been doing this for a long time. And between that and being bilingual, with the new SEC rules for reporting, there are a lot of companies that all of a sudden are going, oh crap, we need one of these reports. and some of them are actually not American companies, but they're US listed.
Yeah.
And we're just a little busy at the moment trying to get through all of these technical report summaries for people.
Yeah.
And some of them, surprise, surprise, have never done the kind of data collection that that we have finally got most of the Canadian companies accustomed to for the NI 43-101 reporting. So it's, shall we say, what's the Chinese saying? May you live in interesting times.
Yeah, they're keeping you busy, I take it.
They are. They are. We're just a little too busy, and some of my crew got really good opportunities this year, and I couldn't hang on to everybody, and I'm trying to rebuild. But yes, we're.
All right, well, Don, it's since it's 6 o'clock, why don't we start? And we have some people have joined us, and the session, we're recording the session, so those that are not they're assigned to review the Zoom recording. And the last assignment relating to this is to write up a short essay on important takeaways from the Q&A. So they'll be doing that, Don, as they review the recording. But of course, the people that are here live will do.
I'll try and make up something good then.
And why don't Ernest, how about unmute yourself and just give a brief introduction on who you are for Don's sake.
Yeah, thanks, Doc. Yes, Don. I'm Ernest, and I'm joining in from Ghana, West Africa.
You're even a little farther east than I am, so congratulations.
Yeah.
What is it, about 1 in the morning?
Yes, it's 1 in the morning here.
Yeah, thank you, Ernest, for getting up and doing that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Douglas, go ahead. Come online, give a short introduction.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Douglas Nespoli. I live in Colombia, but I'm actually here in Brazil right now. I'm a project controls manager for Anglo Gold Ashanti. We have a greenfield project there in Colombia. I'm spending my well, not exactly the holidays vacation yet. I'm still working from here, but I'll start my vacation pretty soon. So, and it looks like we have group number 4 in here. So hopefully we get full marks for the next group exercise.
Oh, very good. Which project are you working on? Gramalote?
No, I mean Quebradona. It's the copper project for
the
Anglo Gold
copper,
Ashanti
okay.
Colombia. Yeah,
For,
we unfortunately lost the operational control of Gramalote project to the partner, the JV partner. B2
I
Gold.
know them.
They are, yeah.
I know them well.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's good.
I've worked with the B2 or BIMA guys since the late 90s.
Yeah, the BIMA guys. Yep.
Good.
Thank you.
And Felix.
Yeah, Felix, go ahead and give a brief introduction for Don's sake.
Hello. Yeah, good evening. This is Felix Adania Kaba. I just joined. I don't know the format of the introduction, but I'm Felix Adania Kaba from Ghana. I'm with Newmont.
Well, welcome, guys.
Thank you. And Alex, so we were talking a little bit beforehand, but go ahead, Alex, give a brief introduction for you too, please.
Yeah, we were saying earlier, Don, I'm a superintendent on the Jansen project in Saskatchewan. Originally from Australia, but now live in Canada. Been here about 15 years now. Enjoying the snow and the cold weather right now.
Yeah, well, send some south. Colorado is horribly dry.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks, Alex. Don, how would you like to proceed?
why don't
Would you
we-
like to just read the questions, or however you'd like to?
We can. So question number one, processing method for the open pit mine in Mexico was heap leach. And I presume we're talking about the Cerro San Pedro open pit mine.
Yes, it was the
Because
one that you had in
Because
your file.
I have worked on a couple of different open pit heap
Yes.
leaches in Mexico. This one, what led the decision to go with heap leach? That's all that was left. It had been mined underground for over 100 years. It had been mined generally traditional small underground methods. Deep underneath it was a sulfide copper gold operation that was mined by Asarco back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And in I believe it was the 50s, the operation, several things happened at once. The operation started making water, excessive water. The prices were down, and the miners decided it was a good time to strike. And so the company just basically turned off the pumps and walked away from it, sent everybody home. The upper reaches of the ore body, which were stronger in gold and silver, as is sometimes happens there, it's farther, more distal from the central part of the deposit. They had been mostly mined out by usually by sublevel stoping or by open stoping, to the extent that part of the mountain actually collapsed because they had taken out enough of the rock to that it could no longer support itself. So really, for that reason, it was safer to go in from the surface, take the whole thing down, and then, but there was a relatively permeable limestone hosting the high grade veins, and it had been mineralized, and so it was, the grades were low in the 2.5 gram gold range, 3 gram gold, but quite readily amenable to leaching. Let's see.
Yeah,
I
that's
guess
good,
what-
Don.
What I was
Yeah.
going to say is that the real key to all of these things when you're making decisions, especially at the exploration development size, is to realize that ore bodies are a little bit like people. Every one of them is different, and almost never does a one-size-fits-all solution work. You have to tailor the solution. Anybody looks good in a suit, but they look way better if the suit actually fits them. So let's see. Kindly explain the growth strategy employed when operation started. They did have a strategy to try to replace reserves or to add additional nearby deposits. They spent a lot of money and effort on some deep drilling and a lot of geophysics, but never could find another target that was shallow enough to operate. It was just not. There was nothing else economic left after the U.S. mining company and the small miners had taken everything out. There was nothing that could be found on the property. We know as geologists that quite often the hot spots that make these high grade vein mines and sometimes porphyries often occur in families a few miles away or a few tens of miles away. But in this case, no one has never found any of the rest of the family. Let's see, did the geology of the mine support underground mining potential? That's a bit of a repeat of question one. It did, and that underground potential, high-grade potential, had already been exploited before we got there. Interestingly, you might call him a visionary. Let me see if I can remember his name. George, and I cannot remember his last name, was a miner who had worked in, explorationist who had worked in Mexico for a lot of his career, knew the area, and had lots of friends in the community. And it was a mining community, had been since the 1800s. And he realized that after several large mining companies, including Peñoles and Grupo Mexico, had come in there and tried to make a go of it, that nobody could make a go of any of the high-grade veins anymore. And he convinced the small miners that still lived in the area, that still had the claims, to allow him to consolidate all of those claims and sell them as a block, and that they could get some money for selling all of them together. And so he had the vision to take all of these small claims and put it into something that could become a big, large tonnage open pit mine. In your opinion, what is the greatest reason that the US mining industry is the safest? And Dr. Schisler has written some of the answer here. Mine safety is regarded as a management system. MSHA training is good. And to a certain extent, it's not just the US industry. It's kind of the worldwide multinational big mining companies. So we're talking not only, Phelps Dodge, Freeport now, Freeport, Newmont, Barrick. We're also talking Vale, Codelco in Chile, a lot of the big companies in, Southern Copper in Peru. And these companies, as well as in Africa, these companies have really bought into improving working conditions, improving safety. It helps their bottom line. It's good for their reputation. They can get more miners. There are still a lot of small miners that don't meet the same kind of safety standards, but I will say, when I worked in Chile, the accident index for mining was 20% of the accident index for all other industrial jobs: agriculture, construction, fishing, forestry. I checked the same statistic a few months ago, and those other jobs have improved now to where the mining accident rate is only 20% rather than, or only 25% rather than 20%. But I don't think that the mining industry has gotten worse. I think that everybody else is just a little bit better than they were. Long-term projections for the interface between mining and the public. It's the million-dollar question. People are starting to realize, and governments are starting to realize, that if we're going to move towards a petroleum or hydrocarbon-free future with wind energy, electric cars, electric vehicles, all of these things, exactly how many minerals they need. Andy, you may have the number in your head. I think it's 4 times as much mass of minerals and metals in an electric car as there is in a gasoline powered car. Batteries, nickel cadmium batteries are basically graphite. Nearly all of them is graphite, but the working parts that do the ion exchange for charging and discharging are the metals. Take huge amounts of minerals. Wind turbines take huge amounts of minerals. And the thing that people are starting to realize is that every time that turbine goes around, those blades flex, and they have about a 20 to 25-year life cycle. And then we're not sure what happens with those. Can they be smelted and recast? I don't know that anyone has tried yet, but so as the world realizes, several things are happening. One of them is the mining industry is finally working hard on its social acceptance. And to a certain extent, they're doing better than petroleum, doing better than some other industries. What they have hanging over us is history, where many of the mines were built and there were no or few environmental regulations. And the occasional huge accident like the Samarco incident in Brazil. Help me, Douglas, what was the other tailings failure?
Yeah, it was a Samarco one in
And
Mariana,
then-
and the Valley one, which was in Brumadinho. Yep.
Brumadinho,
which-
yes.
Yeah, yep. Which killed, unfortunately, more than the other one. Yep.
So, it's sort of like, the safety of airplanes versus automobiles. People die every day in car crashes, but people are more worried about flying because it makes headlines. So while mining has gotten much safer and more gentle to the environment, there are people that are opposed to mining. And these huge accidents just feed to that narrative. So it's a long, slow process, and sadly, the rest of the world will not come to us. We have to go to them, and it has to be, and we have to address the needs of each project one at a time. What are the most common pitfalls companies stumble with due to poor ore body knowledge? And there are many of them. There is one mine in California that had a fracture controlled gold system with some disseminated gold in between. The fractures were nearly vertical and sort of a big shear zone. They were very soft. When it was drilled out with reverse circulation drilling, every time the drill would intersect one of these long, soft fractures, it would then turn just far enough to follow down the fracture. So you got huge, long intercepts of very high grades. When they went into production, they found out that in between these narrow fractures, there was very low grade, and they had spent the money to build a mill that was not appropriate for the ore body they were mining. Critical thinking of geology. Really understand your ore body. I have told people before, if you are absolutely certain that the ore body strikes north-south and dips to the west, and you're drilling parallel to that, and there's something you can't understand about the mineralization, drill a hole north or south and see if you can intersect what's happening. Try to think out of the box, think about what could happen. An expression I use in my modeling class is that if you are driving past a picket fence, the fence with the slats, you can see between them, and you see something tan looking on the other side. As you're driving past, you don't really see what it is. It could be bags of fertilizer. It could be a golden retriever lying there. It could be a woman sunbathing. But you don't really know what's on the other side, because all that you can see are the slices in between. So think about if something seems out of order, try to collect more data to determine what that truly is. Number 7, the most reliable KPIs. And Dr. Schisler has answered this, but let's see. He has short range sequencing, metal accounting indicators. I mean, this is the best. This is probably the overall best thing you can do is to keep up to date your surveying and face sampling, whether it's surface or underground, and consistently try to reconcile your mine to your model to your mill. That works for everything. But you need to be critical, and sometimes it's good to bring in external consultants because your staff tend to accept the model of the deposit as they understand it and not be able to see beyond that. But the geological functions, my interpretation of this is that you're asking, how do you assess mapping? How do you assess assaying? How do you assess these other things? And all of them there are techniques available. They're out there in the literature for quality control of each of these things. How do you do quality control of assay labs? How do you do quality control of geological logging? Very simple technique, and not all that commonly used anymore, is that it used to be that every logging shed that you went into would have what was called a type section on the wall, usually mounted on a piece of plywood with all of the different rock types labeled. And perhaps the rock types were on little shelves so that you could carry them over to wherever you were logging. And you could carry this sample of core that had been selected over to the rock that you were logging and compare it side by side. This helped to make sure that everyone who logged, even if they might not be quite correct geologically, at least they called it all the same thing. So it's important that you be able to trace these back and check them. We did a project a year ago, we're still working on it, where we brought in a geological service to supervise drilling and logging. And the geological model for the deposit was such a mess that we encouraged the owner to go back and to pay the new geological service to go back and re-log all existing core. And previously there had been 30 plus different rock types, which were not grouped into anything intelligible. It turned out that we had 5. 5 is manageable. 32, you wind up with having so few samples in each rock type that you can't make decisions. Douglas? You have your hand up?
No, just clapping. All good. It's a good example. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm sorry, wrong icon. So yes, there is a method. There's something that is taught in most engineering schools around the world, I believe, and it is to not make mistakes. Now, you can have someone else check your work, but the idea is not make mistakes. In mining, as I said, we're working with limited data. We're not necessarily sure what that data is or how it behaves underground. And I kind of feel that not making mistakes is probably not actually a possibility. So we need to constantly think about ways that we can check ourselves and check the people who work for us. Learn to question yourself, not to the point of doubt, but to the point of finding ways to confirm, especially when you go into operations and you have more rock to work with. Try to take that rock, those face samples, back to the core that you logged in that area. Try to really get a 3D understanding. I have told many people that I'm not sure I ever truly understood structural geology until I started looking at it in pit high walls. So yes, that there's nothing like, just like slicing open a watermelon. You can see what's inside of it after you've sliced it, but before you've sliced it, you never quite know. What operations planning monthly level? Did you run into issues with crew changes? Probably the best example I have of that was we had in Chile, our crews, including the not including engineering management, but including the engineering department, all worked 7-day shifts, 7 on, 7 off. And so the only information transfer that happened between the shifts was when one guy walked down the steps of the bus and the other guy shook his hand and walked up the steps of the bus. What I did to deal with this was to establish written procedures. And I asked one shift had finished all of their work and didn't have anything to do the last half a day. I said, why don't you write down your procedure for, in this case, surveying? They said, why? Why would we do that? We know how to do it. I said, and the other shift? Well, they know how to do it. I said, do they do it exactly the same as you do? Oh, goodness, we don't know. But what if they don't? I said, as soon as it's on paper, we can find out and we can decide what's the best way to go. But the one thing that we want to do is to be sure that everyone is doing it the same way so that no one gets confused. So, yeah, documentation, training, and sometimes it's with staggered crews, sometimes it's with crews that overlap by a half a shift at beginning and end. You can get the same thing overnight. Dr. Schisler, you probably remember a poem that used to be floating around the School of Mines. I bet that you have seen it, about the other shift.
Yeah.
And the miner was complaining about the other shift and what a mess they left the heading and everything they did wrong and why didn't they do it why didn't they do it well like we did? The last line in the poem is, what's that you say? There was no shift last night?
Yeah.
So let's see, best way to get the contract miner to understand the need to look past tonnage. And contract miners and contract drillers are the same. If you're a contract driller, you want to make meters. So really what you need to do is you need to write the contract so that they are rewarded for the performance that you want. Same KPIs. It's one of the things that if I can go all the way back to what was the question 4? One of the reasons that the worldwide mining industry got safer, part of the trouble is that and it's not trouble, that's a bad description. Part of the issue is that governments, in the 20th century, and it's one of the things that unions did that really contributed to the industry, was to enhance safety standards. And we've got MSHA, the Secretary of Labor in Mexico. Most countries have an organization, either within the Secretary of Labor or somewhere else, that enforces standards, and this impacts insurance rates for the mine. When mining companies have injuries, the cost of them insuring their operations goes up. It's possible that injured people are due to damage to the facility as well. But there's a direct benefit if you get that injury rate down, and if you have a fatality, your cost to insure goes very high. If you eliminate all those injuries, then your cost to insure stays low, and you help keep your operating costs low. If you can supervise the contractor, make sure that not only is rock going in the box, but the right rock goes in the right box, and you find a way to structure the contract to reward that, it can be beneficial to both. And it's hard to structure a contract to have too many KPIs, but you need to find a way to measure it. Alex, I don't know if you've had that experience with your shaft sinkers.
Yes, we had plenty of contractual issues with the shaft sinkers, and then we just changed contractors to do the shaft lining.
The other real key thing is if you're the mine owner, and if you're the contractor as well, if you're the mine owner, pay attention to the contractor's site manager. If he's not doing it the way you want to, you have a right to request a different one. If he's hiding things, if he's encouraging his crew to not meet your needs, you need to start off having a talk with him, and then have a talk with the company, because they are there. A couple reasons.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
We actually ended up going through 3 site managers before we embedded one of our own to take over as site manager for the contractor, which initially caused some issues, but it delivered the results we wanted.
Absolutely. And I had a contract in Mexico that I had a great working relationship, and the site manager was completely aligned with me. And the contractor changed out the site manager, and the new guy decided to exploit every hole he could find in the contract to charge me more for doing the least amount of work. So you need to have the contractor aligned with your wishes, and contractors are there generally for one of 2 reasons. It's for something like a shaft, where they have capital equipment that you can't afford because you only build one shaft every several years. The other one is that they are there because they are doing jobs And because of efficiencies that they have, they cost less to do certain tasks than you do. And they can absorb additional man hours when you need it. But they are there to make your mine better. They're not there to take your money for nothing. So you need to, they do need to be managed.
Yeah, and we
Um,
had several considerations about trying to change out the contractor before the shafts were sunk, but in the end, we decided that wasn't a good idea because we had so much invested in them. So, but we ended up getting 2 shafts sunk to 1 kilometer without a fatality, which we thought was a pretty successful project.
So number 10, given limited ore control data, I mean, you do what you can. Historically, sometimes you would drill the early areas of the mine on a much tighter spacing so that you understood the early areas of the mine much better than you did in the future. In underground, assuming you're starting near the surface and mining down dip, it's of course cheaper to drill more holes shallow than it is to drill them deep, and where you may need underground drill galleries that you develop ahead of yourself as you go. But it's but the record keeping, one of the worst things, especially going into older mines, is the workings may not be surveyed. They may not be well surveyed. The face samples, if they took them, may not be actually surveyed in, or may not be well associated with their location in space. And and one of my favorites, drill holes should have downhole surveys, especially if they're longer than 80 or 100 meters. Very few drill holes, especially angle drill holes, but very few drill holes are straight. And if you're doing narrow vein mining and you don't know where the vein is, yes, you can follow it down, but you're planning everything else. And if you have multiple parallel veins, they pinch and swell, you may not know which vein you're sampling. Ore control processes, especially at contact zones. Sometimes the nuclear analyzers and the XRF guns with certain minerals can work well. Channel samples and trained geologists mapping and painting faces is very important. Especially if you've got higher grade zones, you can generally see the mineralization more or less. You can see changes that indicate why that rock carries and others don't. One of the things that I harp on in my class is mineral domain modeling, which is understanding what geological factors lead to one rock being higher grade than the other. If you can get a handle on that, and sometimes it's lithology, sometimes it's structure, sometimes it's alteration halos. You can think of supergene or hypogene blankets. All of these things come together to determine what's there, and metal doesn't just go into a certain rock because it sort of thinks it'd be fun. It goes there for a reason. So, get your geological staff to try to understand that reason. And it's a lot of work. I'm completing a re-estimate of a project that we did several years ago because we have more data that finally started to show us that our estimate was erroneous, and we're trying to improve on it. Step one, all models, we make all of our decisions based on models, and two, all models are incorrect. But our goal is to have them be as correct as possible so that we make good decisions. Vertical versus horizontal geology. And so you're thinking vertically integrated where a geologist is responsible for field work and computer modeling and everything else. I think the more this is typically divided up between by the size of the firm. If you can afford to have a larger geological department, you can separate it up and have specialists in each area. I would recommend that if you are in charge of that group, that you rotate those specialists around. I think that some of the best explorationists have been production geologists. Likewise, I think that having experience in exploration can make a better production geologist, because they start thinking about the big picture and not just about the face that they're mining this week. So geology, mining engineering are all sort of, they're multidimensional, and they're not something that you do, the years of experience are important, and that experience is varied, is very important. Let's see, question 14 and 15. How much of the ore deposit type, stratigraphy, and structure were accurate? Oh, less than you would hope. Did we get a good geological model to start with? If we get the general volume of the mineralization about right, the grade about right, to where we can make a correct decision to mine or not mine, sometimes that's about all we can hope for. Some mines are easier. Potash mines, coal mines require fairly few holes. That doesn't mean that you won't have a fault or a washout that you mine into expecting production that's not there. Porphyry copper mines, traditionally they mine them like gangbusters. They just start mining at the top and keep going. They were very forgiving. They were big. You could move a lot of tons, and if you get your operating costs down and you continue making metal out of the mill, you're good. But it's important that you understand. It's important. Part of the reason that declaring measured, indicated, inferred resources is so important is to understand that when you are digging the rock and sending it to the mill, those should probably be measured resources or proven reserves. And you should, whatever criteria you're using to call them that, whether it's drill hole spacing or whether it's the distance to the closest drill hole, whether it is a UK, if it's a conditional simulation technique, if it's a whatever technique you're using to call them measured rather than indicated or inferred, by the time that rock is in the production phase, you should be there. And you need to keep, you shouldn't assume, mine where I worked in Chile actually had taken a bank loan. And to guarantee the payback, the bank had demanded that they decrease their drill spacing from, if I remember correctly, from 50 meters to 25 meters for the first 3 years of production. It turned out that their ore body model performed excellently for 3 years. And then it didn't perform as well. They just did not have enough information. And whatever modeling technique, estimation technique you use, it always does a better job with more information. How often do you review the geological risks of the mine? You should be doing this. If you are in production, you should be doing this constantly. The geologists and the mining engineers are out driving around the pit. If they see wedge failures starting, they should be investigating. Are those wedge failures something that happens on each bench and doesn't propagate? Or are those failures something that can bring down a pit wall? Is it making water? Is the water increasing? You can use rock mechanics techniques like extensometers, prisms mounted in pit walls. It's not necessarily fatal that a pit wall be moving, but if it starts accelerating, you need to get out. But all of these things, it's one of the key factors, I think, is that all of these risks are why we have experienced people managing and why they have experienced specialists, whether they're community outreach people, whether they're engineers, blasters, geologists, water managers, is that we take a lot of measurements when we're mining, or we should be taking a lot of measurements. And if you're tracking those measurements and you start to see changes, someone needs to make the decision, and you need to have management support that they go and find out why is it changing. It could be dangerous, it could be innocent. Much like your health. The change means that something different is going on. Is that bad, good, or otherwise? And quarterly reviews, annual reconciliations. Some of these things you bring in external consultants to get more experience, and some of these things many of these things can be done in-house. It's a matter of paying attention. So I recommend that you be aware. Good luck. Be safe. Does anyone have any other questions? They're all asleep. Andy?
Some of us are still awake here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry. There's one other question that came in that I feel it's a very intriguing question. In your career, did you, and this is in the context of being at a mine, managing the mine or being in charge, did you have competing priorities to manage? And how did you do it?
Always. You set them up. And as we already discussed, the mining industry has done a good job of safety first. That one's easy. You know, community and environment second. And that's really, Andy, in the last 20 years, maybe 25. That the awareness that these things are important to the long-term health of the company, and it's not just profit margins. In general, if you focus on safety, focus on attitude, and get all of your division managers on board that what we're focused on is the product, is the only thing I can recommend, because there are a traditional fight was that the mine would, they would say you should cut your mining cost. Okay, we'll drop the powder factor a little bit. Well, all of a sudden, the crusher productivity goes to hell because you've just started feeding rocks that are 20% bigger into the crusher, and they have to be crushed more. You know, you really need to take it all the way through to whether you're producing, you know, coal or doré or metal concentrates. What is your production price per pound of product that is going out, or per pound of metal? So you don't try to minimize the cost of the mine at cost to the crusher. Now, probably the newest kid on the block is environmental sampling. Everyone wants to do the least expensive environmental work they can, but you need to determine, is that work enough? Because if you lose a permit, if you cause a spill, all of those costs immediately overwhelm the savings that you got by doing less testing. In some of my writings, I have referred to the social licensing problem as a binary risk. That simply means that you think you're going along well until all of a sudden you have a blockade at the front gate and your delivery trucks can't come in and the mine is shut down. There was no, you need to be aware of what's going on in the community. With your public outreach, involve people in the community. Try to have people from the community be part of that team, because they hear things that you as a mine manager will never hear. You can go out and meet with the people and they'll shake your hand and smile. Excuse me, please. And then but behind your back, you need to know what people are saying. And if they think that your mine is somehow taking things from them that they don't want to have taken, the reaction can be extreme and even violent. So it's a juggling act, and it's one of the reasons that mining is fun and challenging and never simple. It is a multidisciplinary business.
Okay, well, Don, the venue, everyone did a great job. Thank you for attending. Thank you, Don, for calling in from South Santiago, and you other students on the line. Thank you for chiming in. We'll just go ahead and end the call. And on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, we have the second guest lecturer, and you'll find him equally as superb and excellent as Don is in answering your questions. So thank you, and I'll end the call. And thank you, students, and we'll see you Saturday morning at 8 o'clock.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good
You're
night,
very
everyone.
welcome. Muito obrigado. Muchas
Gracias.
gracias.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very good, very good.
Muito bem. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Muito bem, muito bem. Até logo. Tchau.
All right, bye.